Hello, I'm James Dean Bradfield of Manic Street Preachers, but at the moment I'm solo. Got my new album coming out, Even in Exile, which is based on the life of Viktor, Hara, and this is my life in 20 pieces of vinyl. This is Big Flame, the Rigger EP. This is my first proper vinyl obsession, this group. Big Flame were named after a socialist feminist group movement that were formed in Liverpool in 1970 or the early 70s, I believe, and they copped a lot of the look of the literature that the Big Flame movement had, and that just hooked me in straight away. I remember first hearing this band on a John Peel session, I think, and I remember they sounded a bit like Pierre Ubu, a bit like the pop group, a bit like Gang of Four, but it felt as if they'd gone further. It was even more violent, it was even more articulate, it was even more satirical, and it was just more of a jazz element. And once you realise that once they played a song, they played it the same every time, then you understood the key to Big Flame, because it sounded chaotic when you first heard it, and it sounded very freeform and jazz, but that's the way they constructed their songs, I believe. I just absolutely loved them. I had correspondence with the guitarist, Greg. He sent me a couple of letters back. That was really cool. That was my second experience of having fan correspondence. After Jello Biafra from Dead Kennedys had sent a letter back to us as well. And yeah, I absolutely love this band. I've got every record they ever did. If you put one of their records on, people can actually just go, wow, what is that? Because it sounds violent and chaotic. But it was constructed chaos. Very political band, and yeah, one of my early obsessions. As you can see, there's a price on there from Beano's second-hand record shop. This is because I had to sell a lot of my vinyl in 1990 to get another guitar. So 20 years after that, I kept trying to rebuy the piece of vinyl that I'd sold, and I rebought this, which I originally had, in Beano's second-hand record shop, which was in Croydon, I think. An amazing shop. Everything was alphabet sized and genre sized, just so organised. It was mega. Anyway, this record is perfection. This is the Skids. Just such an amazing group. From the bass player to the drummer to the singer to the guitarist, just perfection. I was obsessed with the Skids. Of course, Stuart Abson went on to form Big Country, who I loved as well. And just the guitar sound in this is amazing. The lyrics are amazing. Richey Jobson's performance on it, the drums, bass, everything. Richey Jobson subsequently went on to direct a film that was called Woman in Winter, which is good, quite an underrated film actually. It's a bit of a love story, but with some kind of almost that kind of time continuum vibe to it. Not quite. Anyway, I met Richey Jobson about a year and a half ago, and he just didn't disappoint. He was so intense, he was so intelligent, he was so accommodating when I asked all my fan questions. I asked him about his solo career, I asked him about his, the films he's directed and a couple of books he's written. And yeah, myself, Nick, Richey and Sean, we all love the Skids, and this is perfection. There's not a thing about this record that you could change and make it better. It's just amazing. Okay, this is Silver by Echo and the Bunnymen. Of course, it was a track of one of the best albums of all time. Ian McCulloch said it is the best album of all time, which is Ocean Rain. Special for a lot of reasons. Silver is an amazing song. Nick has talked about, Nicky has talked about the stream of consciousness, the lyrics in this, many a time where he said, it's such an amazing, has such an amazing poetry to it, its own rhythm. And I love this for two reasons, because this is where I realised that sometimes the B-side could be as important as the A-side. And amongst all hardcore Echo and the Bunnymen fans, the B-side, Angels and Devils, I think if you did a straw poll of Echo and the Bunnymen fans, Angels and Devils would probably be their favourite B-side of Echo and the Bunnymen. And you always know a proper Echo and the Bunnymen fan, because they always, if you ask them what their favourite Echo B-side is, they'll say Angels and Devils. And whenever they decide to play it live, you just punch the air. It's just amazing. Echo and the Bunnymen very important to us because myself, Sean and Richey went to see them in Bristol. That was my first ever concert. It was Sean's first ever concert. And I believe it was Richey's first ever concert. And it was a seminal evening for us. We got all their autographs. We all listened to Echo and the Bunnymen for nothing but Echo and the Bunnymen for 2 weeks before we went to the concert. Nick didn't come for some reason, I don't know why. And yeah, for that thing, the cult of the B-side, and for that being our first ever concert, is just probably just one of my biggest and best memories. So yeah, Echo and the Bunnymen, Silver, B-side, Angels and Devils. This is Therese by the Bodines. There were two groups called the Bodines. This is Bodines. Anybody that was a fan of the C86 movement in the mid-80s, obviously 86, it was a little movement kind of described as C86 by the Enemy, which was kind of cutie indie, but it's not a good description. But anyway, it was called C86, and this was part of that. And anybody that knows of C86 knows that this is one of the best songs to come out of it. This subsequently went on to be the album Played. But this single is just amazing. And it's produced by Ian Broudie. People associate Ian Broudie with the Lightning Seeds and that English football song, kind of thing. But kind of, he was an amazing record producer. You know, when I first met Ian Broudie, I asked him millions of questions about Echo and the Bunnymen because of his production career with Echo and the Bunnymen. And he also produced this. He was a brilliant producer, such a clean, sharp producer, and he knew how to treat a pop song when he heard it. For me, you know, you always knew a great song when you heard it as a producer. He produced this, you know, produced stuff like The Coral as well. So yeah, you ask any C86 historian, and this is top of the list for that movement. And yeah, went up for Ian Broudie, who I kind of know now, and I bored him to death about asking him questions about his production career, and he kind of swerves me every time he sees me now. So there you go, Therese. Sorry Somehow by Husker. Husker named themselves after a Danish board game, I think so. I remember when these guys played in Stowhill Social Club in Newport. Every punk in South Wales wanted to go to that gig. This was my go-to song when I was feeling desperate about something. And in the mid-80s, there was a lot to feel desperate about, let me tell you. But then again, people always feel that. If you ask a 17-year-old now, they'd probably feel there's a lot to be desperate about. This was my go-to song. This was one of my cures. Oh, this was a song that gave me empathy, but with a shot of violence too. I talked about Ian Broudie producing records in such a clean and sharp way. Conversely, the production on Husker records was nothing like that. I've still never heard production that sounds like early Husker. It's so weird, and I used to think it was terrible, but now I kind of think it's amazing. Grant Hart went on to form Nova Mob. Bob Mould went on to form Sugar. You're going to find with a lot of these records, a lot of the artists involved in these records subsequently go on to form other bands. Just amazing Minneapolis, like punk-based, kind of a pop song, and one of my kind of pills I used to take, metaphorically, when I was young. This is The Beaten Generation by The. I think all of us were kind of Matt Johnson fans. It's funny you say The, but you say Matt Johnson. It's really weird when a group is kind of inhabited by one person, kind of thing. Anyway, you know, we all had soul mining. We'd all been into, you know, the album Infected, which was an intense record. Then there was Mind Bomb. Now, this is a scary moment for us because, as you can see, they're all wearing white. And we saw the video and we heard the song and we were all excited about it. And we thought, has Matt Johnson stolen our new thing? Because at that point, we all had short haircuts, we were all wearing white jeans, we were kind of wearing spray painted like white shirts and white t-shirts. We're obsessed with the Beat Generation's kind of literature through Patrick Jones, Nicky Wire's brother. And we were just like, he's actually bugged our houses. He's stolen our thing. This is before we, I think we'd only just released Suicide Alley, I think, our own little self-press record. So this scared us. We were like, Matt Johnson's stolen our thunder. Just absolutely love this record. This is when he linked up with Johnny Marr, which was a perfect marriage. And I'll freely say that one of the songs on my new record, The Boy from the Plantation, definitely there's an echo of the feel of this song in there, especially Johnny Marr's contribution to this. And yeah, so I absolutely love this, and Matt Johnson's been particularly unwell lately, so it's a get well soon, sir. Hope you're okay. Beaten Generation, they're there. Story of the Blues, Part 1 and 2, by Wah. Could have been by Shambuka Say Wah, or Wah Heat, or the Mighty Wah, but at this point they were Wah, not even the Wah. Really important record in kind of Manic's history. This was a hit in 1982, and it was a proper hit. I think it was top 5, number 3, number 2. So this record was all over the charts, and Pete Wiley and the Wah, I'd never really been on the radio that much, except for the Janice Long, David Jensen, John Peel show. They'd be played in the evenings. This is the first time that you became aware of the Wah, being played on daytime radio. As soon as you hear this song, it's a proper hit. It's like Born to Run. It's just one of those songs you hear it and you realise it's an amazing song, and that's why it was such a massive hit. And so it stuck with me. And by the time I got to 1984, 85, I'm really getting into indie stuff, I'd realised that the Wah, kind of like were more of an underground NME band than a pop band. So I'd looked up who produced it, and it was a guy called Mike Hedges, and cut to 1993, late 93, we asked Mike Hedges if he'd produce the Holy Bible, and he came back and he said, I'd love to work with you, but I can't, I'm booked up for the next year and a half or so. And then obviously subsequently Mike Hedges went on to produce Everything Must Go and This Is My Truth, Tell Me Ours, which was much more appropriate because there was lots of strings over those two records, and there's lots of strings in this. He knows what to do with that kind of arrangement. And I got reminded about Mike Hedges when he produced Yes by McCammott and Butler. So I've been a massive fan of Mike Hedges as a producer when he did stuff like this, and he'd done stuff with the Banshees and did early stuff with the Cure. But perhaps this is one of the reasons why Design for Life, sounds as good as it does, because we picked the right producer for the right song. This record is amazing. So, My Old Piano by Diana Ross. First single I ever bought on my own. The first record I bought for me was Pinky and Perky's Party at the corner shop in Fountain Fife, but my mum bought it for me. It was an album, really good. But this is, I remember I'd hear this on the radio. My mum was always had the radio on. She was always singing, and this record just hooked me. So I think this is 1980. I'm 11 years old, 81. And I saved my money up, and then I walked to Blackwood. From Pontefract to Blackwood was about 1.5 miles. Went to Woolworths. I've been saving up for it for 2 weeks. Went and bought it with my own money in Woolworths. Then I walked back to Pontefract, and I could see somebody in the distance. And it was one of the older kids that lived in my street, who was a metal fan. He was Saxon, Whitesnake, AC/DC. As I got closer to him, he ripped the bag up my hand, and he was like, "What the hell is this? Diana Ross?" And I could see he was just so excited to get back into school Monday to tell everybody that this is what I'd bought. So subsequently I was a complete idiot, obviously. But this is Diana Ross's best album, Diana, produced by Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards. 3 amazing singles off it, Coming Out, Upside Down, My Old Piano. I love this record, absolutely love it. And the first single I ever went and bought on my own, My Old Piano, Diana Ross. Okay, this is Doppler. Or Celiac. Yeah, strange. It's kind of. I think I got this record in 2013. Yeah, I think so. I remember playing it, and obviously, as soon as you play it, I don't think it's Robin Edwards is the name of the guy. I don't think he'd shy away from saying that it's very krautrock influenced. I remember playing this record, then playing it again. And after a year, I realised that if there was nothing on the radio and I didn't have any inspiration in my head, this was my go-to record. I just kept putting it on for it to be on in the background. Which is a compliment, I think, if you're somebody that listens to music a lot obsessively, when you just need a record to comfort you, when you just need a record to be on to keep you company, that's a very, very high compliment. And I've kept going back to this record when I perhaps need to be a bit centred, when I just need to think in a straighter line. I put this record on. I think it's a bit of a lost Welsh classic. Just love the artwork as well, love the name. The very first track on it, 23.4, it's just brilliant. So yeah, a bit of a lost Welsh classic, I would say, Doppler. Okay, so we have, for me, the most complete Cult album, Dreamtime. So obviously this came before Love, this came before Electric, it came before Sonic Temple. I think this is the first record after they've dropped Death from their name. And of course they were Southern Death Cult before that. Big 80s thing of letting your name mutate kind of thing. This is the classic lineup of like Nigel Preston on drums, Jimmy Stewart, Ian Astbury, Billy Duffy. This record's amazing. It's absolutely, this guitar tour de force. Just like, kind of Ian Astbury just properly just like forms like a kind of like a choir boy banshee on this record. It's brilliant. And this is one of those great records where when you bought it, you got a free live album with it. It was Dreamtime at the London Lyceum. And me and three of my London mates, John, Robin and Deke, we all kind of like bonded over this record because we all focused on the live album a tiny bit. And there was this bit on there where Ian Ashby goes, fuck the house lights, this one's dedicated to John Curd, wherever you are, Moya. We all knew that little bit of live dialogue, and then we all subsequently found out who John Curd was, who was a legendary live promoter in London. And I actually painted this in my spare time, this cover. Anyway, so amazing record. For me, absolute, just the Cult at the top of their game. Of course, they went on to do brilliant records after. But there's something about this, I met Ian Ashby by accident last year at a festival, and he said they were just channeling the blues for this record. And he was telling me stuff about this record and about Nigel Preston, the drummer that sadly passed away. And then he ended the conversation with, sorry, I've got to take this call, there's something wrong with my boiler. So kind of like that was quite a kind of surreal experience for me. Anyway, Dreamtime by the Cult. It Takes the Nations of Millions to Hold Us Back by Public Enemy, their second album. This is the original copy. Played this to death. And is that self-fabled time in the Manics, self-mythologized and all that, that we were just listening to this, an Appetite for Destruction, just back to back. Not to show how magnanimous we were or anything like that. It's just like, they were just two utterly visceral records. They were just amazing. It just felt like an amazing time to be out when these two albums were going shoulder to shoulder. This is just an amazing record. I remember liking a record by the Ultramagnetic MCs called Travelling at the Speed of Thought. And that was me really getting into rap for the first time. But this came just really quickly after. And kind of like, I just realised this is where it was at. And I realised that Chuck D was absolutely just top level rapper compared to other people. And, of course, the tracks in here, like Bring the Noise, which I know, I can do that completely. I can perform that, it's one of my party pieces, but I won't do it. Then obviously you got Don't Believe the Hype, but then there's a track in here called Black Steer in the Hour of Chaos, where I realise it's so cinematic. It's like the start of a film. It's just brilliant. The rap on it is brilliant. The dialogue on it is brilliant. The sampling is very Holy Bible as well. And yeah, Fear of a Black Planet, you know, kind of came after this. But of course, this is the record I fell in love with, so it'll always be my favourite. And if you just went back and listened to this record, just listen to Black Steel and the Hour of Chaos as to what a rap record can really be. It's just amazing. You know, I think Chuck D is still my favourite rapper. He just is. And this is a very, very scratched version of It Takes the Nations of Millions to Hold Us Back by Public Enemy. This is Tail Lights Fade by Buffalo Tom. I was going through my records, and I don't own any Buffalo Tom albums, but I do own this. Because I picked this because it reminds you of Richey. Richey used to play this song after gigs when we were travelling from Stoke, you know, to Glasgow back to Wales. This would invariably be on after a gig when he'd had a couple of beers and when he was feeling a bit soppy. This is one of Richey's go-to songs, and we all grew to love this song. And it's strange I never went on to buy any of their albums, but I went out and bought this. Just a brilliant song of just like lovely, soft, yearning desperation, which is why Richey liked it. He loved a bit of soft, yearning desperation. So yeah, this is just for the memory of just how much Richey could love music, and without any subtext or even context, it was just something to give him a bit of comfort, really. So yeah, Tail Lights Fade by Buffalo Tom. Okay, so this is Moving Pictures by Rush. Only ever had it on CD until about 2 years ago when Nick bought me this for my 48th birthday. So he obviously got it for me on vinyl. Nicky Wyatt and his brother Pat were just Rush obsessives. Were, are, forever will be. I didn't get into Rush until I was I didn't properly get into them until I was about 18. Before that, I was aware of Spirit of Radio because it was such a gigantic hit single, and it was just amazing. But I started really buying all their back catalogue when I was about 18, about an album a year kind of thing. Anyway, this is just an amazing record. It's like the lost link between Jimmy Page and Annie Sumner from the Police. You know, that style of guitaring. It's got lots of flange and bits of chorus on it, but it's still steeped in rock lineage and deep rock DNA, rock and roll DNA, but it's got that kind of like early 80s, kind of reaching for modernity kind of vibe. I mean, it's just, you know, it's got Tom Sawyer on it, you know, it's got Red Barchetta on it, you know, YYZ, Limelight. I mean, wow, what a first side of vinyl. You don't get much better than that. And Red Barchetta is quite a prophetic lyric, if you go and listen to it. Anyway, there you go. This is an amazing slab of just really ambitious and kind of pretentious rock and roll. And I'll always have to thank Nicky Wire and Patrick Jones for getting me into Rush. So there you go. Okay, this is Waterfront 12-inch, Simple Minds. There are not many records that I've listened to more than the B-side of this. So again, we're into the territory of, if you're a proper fan of something, you start finding things in the nooks and crannies of where the band is. So that means on the B-side, or like, you know, extras on another disc or wherever, or a book. And of course, Waterfront of Spark in the Rain is just a really original record. You know, it's a record about the post-80s decline of Thatcher's Britain and the boat and the shipbuilding industry in Scotland and Glasgow in particular. Lots of parts of Scotland, sorry. So it's really good lyric, really good intention to the record. I'd been into Simple Minds through Empires and Dance because of I Travel and Sweating Bullet and Love Song. You know, I got all their albums, Life in a Day, Reel to Reel Cacophony, Empires and Dance, Suns and Fascination, Sister Feelings Call, New Gold Dream, Sparkle in the Ring when they went gigantic, which is an amazing record. But then, I remember buying this 12-inch and then flipping it over the B-side, and there was a song called Hunter and the Hunted, which is off New Gold Dream, which I never really liked that song much. And then I played this live version of it from Newcastle City Hall, and it became a new song. So this is when a live version suddenly breathes life into the song that wasn't perhaps done justice when it was recorded for an album. And I've played this B-side nearly more than any other piece of music in my life, and I don't know why. I just connected with it. Every little yelp, every little scream, every little lick on the guitar, every little kind of like, kind of soft jazz note on the piano, every little kind of like, hammer on the bell of the ride cymbal. I know everything about this track. Everything. Absolutely everything. It got me through so much, and even now when I put this B-side on, this live version of Hunter and the Hunted, I just get a tingle up my spine. Absolutely stunning, stunning. Best bit of live recording ever done. Amazing. This is Manifesto by Viktor Hara. Bit confusing, I think this is a compilation album. There was another album by Viktor Hara called Manifesto. I don't think it's this one. It's a bit confusing. But basically, this is the piece of vinyl that Patrick Jones gave me when we decided that we were going to try and turn some of his poems about Viktor Hara into a record. I was aware of Viktor Hara as an entity, as a person, as a piece of history, as a piece of tragedy. Before I really knew his music, I was aware of him through songs by Working Week, U2, dedications by Simple Minds, etc. Lots of people, David Ewan. But then Pat gave me the record. He said, properly listen to his songs, and it's what really pushed me into making a kind of concept album about Viktor Hara. Musically, he's brilliant, and if you actually just listen to the song, Manifesto, it's a stunning piece of work. It's so gentle and so expressive, and it takes flight with, kind of without any available wind. It's just like it manages to go somewhere under its own power. And when you think of protest singers, you think of something which is very much fist aloft in the air. You think of something which is very much more to the camera, confrontational to the audience. But Viktor Hara wasn't really like that. There's always an innate beauty in everything he does, especially a song like Manifesto. I don't know how he did it, to be honest. So if you ever see this in any second-hand store, this compilation, get it. It'll make sense of certain things for you, like it did for myself and Patrick. Just an amazing part of our journey on the way to making this record is this piece of vinyl. Okay, Demis Roussos, Forever and Ever. I found a box of records that had travelled from Wales to London and then back to Wales with me when I moved back to Wales full time. And this is one of those records that made that journey with me. Whenever I was homesick, there were a few records that I wanted to put on. Homesick for the valleys in South Wales, to be honest. And this is one of those records. I looked at some of the choices I'd made of the records I took to London with me. And there were some strange choices in there. And I realised subconsciously I was taking some records with me for comfort, to remind me of being 10, 11, 12 years old. And this is one of them, Demis Roussos, Forever and Ever itself is an amazing song. There's also another song on here called When I Am a Kid, which I love. My mum used to play it to me to cheer me up when I was young. Big 70s kind of hero for a lot of households. And kind of obviously he was in a group called Aphrodite's Child, which, he straddled popular entertainment, and he was in a band that gets written about in, prog rock magazine. So a really interesting character, and just amazing songs, brilliant songs, just full of longing. So a song that's followed, a record that's followed me around and kept me company and reminded me of more innocent times in my collection. Okay, I Who Have Nothing, Tom Jones. Another one from my parents' collection that followed me around from Cardiff to London and then back to Wales. Another one of those records that snuck in there along with indie stuff like Big Flame and Shop Assistants and the Bodines and Simple Minds and Cult. And then you have Demis Roussos and Tom Jones. And I put these records in there because I want to be reminded of those weekend moments when you're young, where your parents come in slightly a bit squiffy and they put records on, and this is another one of those records that they will put on. There's actually some great stuff in here. Daughter of Darkness is always a Tom Jones song that I really loved. And his version of Try a Little Tenderness is just, well, I think it's brilliant. And I always had this thing where Tom Jones's version of American Trilogy, I think, came before Elvis's version. I may be wrong, but I think it stands up. You know, Tom's version of American Trilogy is, you know, really quite full and kind of profound and heavy. So yeah, it's another one of those records from my parents' collection that I stole, put it in my box, and it's followed me around in my life whenever I've moved house, moved country, moved back, you know, and that's one of those records that just gives you comfort. Okay, World Destruction by The Project, which was called Time Zone, featuring John Lydon and Africa Bambaataa. Predates all those kind of those records that try to fuse heavy rock and rap together, you know, Anthrax and Public Enemy, to a certain degree, you know, Run DMC and kind of Aerosmith. This kind of predates all that, and perhaps it did that job of preparing me for you know, liking some of those records that did, you know, mash things up. Just a great record. They went well together. It's really strange because I think it was, well, Bill Laswell is on here, plays bass. I think Bill Laswell ended up playing on stuff like Rise, Public Image stuff, I think. So there was a bit of a connection there that predates, you know, Public Image's Second Coming kind of thing. Just a brilliant record, just one of those great little collaborations that came out of nowhere. I just absolutely love it, and it's a record that I regularly play. And if I'm putting together a playlist for myself, this always just pops out, and it's just cool. Slightly got some kind of like context to it, but it's a rocking record, and I wish they'd done more together. And it's one of those things where I'm gonna have to chase up the album, because they were, Time Zone was a project from Germany, I think, and I never got the album. So it's another one of those records that I had to sell to get a guitar, and rebought at Beano's in Croydon. And I think I've just about rebought all those records back now. So there you go. Okay, so this is V2 by That Petrol Emotion. It was their second single, I think. They came from the remnants of the Undertones, great Northern Irish band. And again, it was another thing where I heard their first single, Keen, on the Janice Long show, and definitely heard them on John Peel show too. I thought, yeah, I'm going to get into this. I can hear something there which is going to be interesting. And they had an American singer called Steve Mack. I remember going to see them at Cardiff University and thought they were amazing. I think they were supported by Voice of the Beehive that night in Cardiff University. And yeah, it's just there's so many bands that got formed after original bands split up, you know, whether it be, you know, Skids, you know, going into Big Country, Undertones, going into this. And this is another record where the context for me is bound up with sending away for a record when I was young. You'd get these adverts in the back of the Enemy and Sounds and Melody Maker, where you could send away for records to a company called Small Wonder Records. So if you'd gone to Cardiff or Newport and you couldn't find a copy of what was quite an obscure record in Spillers or anywhere in Newport, you had to send away for it, and you'd send away a postal order, and this is one of those records. You know, Shop Systems, Big Flame, you know, Petrol Motion. A lot of these records were bought through mail order through a company called Small Wonder Records. So thank God for postal orders and Small Wonder Records in the 80s. Okay, so Songs for Democracy, Discos de la Brigadas Internacionales. 6 songs for democracy. This was a present off our boss, Rob, who's in America now. He got myself, Nick and Sean one of these. And it was published in America in the 1940s, and there's a personal inscription for Paul Robeson there. And it's an amazing piece of history. There are songs in here by Bertolt Brecht, obviously. You know, I formed a bit of Caucasian chalk circle myself, if a drum roll level. But yeah, it's an amazing, obviously it's an old 78, and there's some amazing power in the grooves of this little package here. There's stuff like the Peat Bog Soldier, which was written in a concentration camp, and that song became a bit of an anthem. The Spanish Civil War. So yeah, it's an important little piece of history, and the fact that Paul Robeson is tied into it. The actual songs in there are really intriguing. It says it all. 6 songs for democracy. That's quite a kind of a stated aim for a little package of records. And when you put them on, you really feel the weight of everything. You feel the weight of expression. You feel the purity of it. You feel the hope, and you feel the resistance in it. So I've played this quite a lot over the last 2 years or so. I don't know how much of it has sunk in, but a lot of it is sung by a guy called Ernst Busch, a German actor that was very much a staunch socialist and kind of, what you call it, a freedom activist. It's an interesting package, an amazing present off our ex-boss, and still our boss really, and that's very precious to me. Okay, hope you've enjoyed my life in 20 pieces of vinyl. I feel a bit bad because there's a couple of records here that didn't make the cut. There's All Day Long by the Shop Assistants, there's Ultramagnetic MCs, so I did mention them. There's Sly and the Family Stone, there's lots of stuff here that didn't quite make the grade. Jasmine Minks, lots of stuff. But I hope you enjoyed it. The thing that's kind of come across is, there's stuff from Spain, there's stuff from Germany, there's stuff from Chile, there's stuff from Greece, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England. There's stuff from everywhere. Good music can come from anywhere, obviously. And that's the main thing I've discovered about looking at this selection. Hope you've enjoyed it. And lots of love.